The X-Men universe as we know it is huge, and among the vast, mighty mutants to choose from, some tend to slip between the cracks. One such character is the half-brother of the more hyped mutant Nightcrawler. Meet Abyss, one of the wildest and most underrated mutants in X-Men history. He's not your typical hero. In fact, he's barely a hero at all. Between being conceived as a tool of interdimensional conduit and being a living portal often stuck in morally gray zones, his story is messy but intriguing. So today, we'll dive deep into his origin, his battles, his powers, and more. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Abyss's struggles with identity, the legacy virus, and X-Corps. Neil Steiger, better known as Abyss, is arguably one of the most intriguing characters in the X-Men universe. He's the son of Azazel, a demonic teleporter and the half-brother of Nightcrawler. However, since he wasn't raised by his parents, he had no awareness of his lineage. He's not your average mutant. Abyss was born with a highly unusual mutation. His body contains a dimensional rift, a literal black hole in his chest that can pull people into a pocket dimension. He was once a mutate on Genosha, an island nation, and among the many who contracted the deadly mutant-killing virus, the legacy virus. During these dire times, biogeneticist Renee Magicum began searching for possible cures for the virus, and Abyss became her protector. This was when Professor Charles Xavier recruited him into the secret cabal, the Mutant Underground, who were entrusted with the responsibility of fighting for the vindication of mutants. Abyss even almost killed the former magistrates of Genosha in his pursuit of protecting Renee against Cable, Domino, and Douglock. Just when Abyss's body was about to collapse into the very void inside him, he was cured of the virus with the help of Colossus. After being cured, he moved to Berlin and found himself battling Fever Pitch, a fire-wielding mutant. During the battle, both Abyss and Fever Pitch were captured by the X-Corps militia led by Banshee and forced into a scientific study. This was Banshee's attempt to create a mutant-led force by including heroes and former villains within the same team, who would handle all mutant affairs independent of any human institutions. Unlike some other mutants who saw this as their opportunity for redemption, it was apparent that Abyss was being held in X-Corps against his will. During his confinement, he witnessed the murder of another mutant, Sunpyre, by some rogue X-Corps. This was followed by a revelation that a mutant terrorist, Mystique, had apparently infiltrated the X-Corps with a desire to seize X-Corps' assets for herself. Forced by the circumstances, a wounded Banshee had to release Abyss so he could defeat Mystique by pulling her into his body. But it was not all smooth sailing. Abyss's power was immense, so at some point, while sucking Mystique into his body, he lost control and almost sucked in Banshee too. Thankfully, other members of X-Corps arrived soon and prevented that from happening. Battles with Azazel, power loss on M-Day, and his final fate. Abyss never truly had a typical father-son relationship with Azazel. In fact, Azazel was a manipulative mutant who had fathered many other children across dimensions apart from Abyss and Nightcrawler, collectively known as Neophim, only to realize his goal of using them to open a portal between his own hellish realm and Earth. This was so that he could be freed from the Brimstone Dimension, where he was banished hundreds of years ago. And when the time came, Abyss was mentally compelled, just like all of Azazel's children, to travel to Isla de Demonis, the Island of Demons, to free Azazel from the Brimstone Dimension. To foil his father's plans, he joined the X-Men and other mutants with teleportation powers to cause the collapse of the portal. Even though many of the teleporters were killed during this battle, Abyss survived, but not before ejecting everything that he had previously engulfed in the void of his body. This battle was a true eye-opener for Abyss. It was during this mission that he found out that Azazel was his father and Nightcrawler was his half-brother. We'll discuss the Brimstone Dimension in more detail later, so stay tuned. Then came M-Day, an event that reshaped mutant kind and changed Abyss. Once the Scarlet Witch lost control of her reality warping powers, after repressed memories of her deceased children were unlocked, she was taken in by her father, Magneto. She was then convinced by her twin, Quicksilver, to create an alternate reality wherein the mutants became the dominant race. However, the illusion didn't last long, and soon the heroes regained their memories. Enraged by Quicksilver's plan, Magneto killed her, but unfortunately Unfortunately, this gave Scarlet Witch the impression that Magneto cared more about the mutants than his own children. So in a fit of rage, Scarlet Witch changed and warped reality again and uttered, "No more mutants," which caused thousands of mutants across the globe to be stripped of their powers overnight, including Abyss. Following these events, Abyss became an ordinary mortal. Soon after, Abyss's ordinary self joined the terrorist group XL, which blamed the government for M-Day and sought revenge. After being a member of XL, the isolationist gave Abyss mechanical tentacles. When members of X-Factor attacked the XL headquarters, Abyss used the tentacles to send Guido flying blocks away. Following this, Quicksilver gave Abyss his powers back, along with other members of the XL. However, a lot of members became unstable with this newfound power, and to save them from exploding, Abyss absorbed them into his reformed Brimstone Dimension. While Abyss's plan did pan out and the explosion was prevented, once inside the dimension, time froze around them, but their fate worsened. They were pulled out of the dimension by Terrence Hoffman, only to be drained of their powers again. But Hoffman laid trouble for himself and accidentally freed Abyss, along with Fatale and Reaper. Sometime after, Abyss was also captured by Orcus. In the aftermath of the Hellfire Gala, Orcus used Abyss to seek entrance into the Limbo Embassy, which was invaded by an alternate Madeline Pryor. This led to a brutal confrontation inside the dimension and marked the end of Abyss. Amid the battle, Azazel entered the fray and killed Abyss by snapping his neck. Abyss's story is quite ironic if you think about it. Tragic even. He was conceived as a tool by his father to open a portal, and in a cruel twist of fate, that purpose defined his end. The Brimstone Dimension explained. So what is the Brimstone Dimension that seems to be so intricately connected to Abyss? Teleportation in the X-Men universe isn't simply just vanishing from one place to another. Rather, it involves a complex journey through unexplored corners of realities and mysterious realms. One of the most iconic of these is the Brimstone Dimension, a hellish interdimensional space tied to several teleporting mutants. It's located in Isla de Demonis, in a dimensional rift with a tear connected to all points on Earth. It's often described as dark, smoky, and filled with a sulfuric odor, hence the name Brimstone. Hundreds of years ago, in a battle between the angelic mutants Cheopharin and demon-like mutants Neophim, the Neophim, including Azazel, were banished from Earth in Isla de Demonis and trapped in a timeless prison. To free himself from prison, Azazel planned to breed countless teleporting mutants that could momentarily pass the Brimstone Dimension during teleportation. Azazel's children, like Abyss, Nightcrawler, and Kiwi Black, all had access to this dimension. Now here's the catch. While other mutants like Nightcrawler can only briefly travel through the Brimstone Dimension, Abyss is something else entirely. His body contains an actual permanent rift into the Brimstone Dimension itself. So essentially, Abyss's torso is a direct portal to the dimension, and he can literally suck anything inside this void. So to sum up, Nightcrawler can only momentarily pass through it. Azazel, with his psychic connection, can access it to travel between worlds, and Abyss is the living passage. Moving on, to fulfill his plan, Azazel used his genetic connection to call upon all his mutant children to the Island of Demons and create a rift in the Brimstone Dimension. But things didn't go as planned. Azazel seemed to have underestimated Abyss, who turned against his father and joined the X-Men in a fight to thwart the plan. He took control of his own power, shut down the ritual, and banished Azazel, along with other Neophims, again to an alternate realm. What are Abyss's powers and abilities? Just like his father and all his half-brothers, Abyss is a Neophim, a teleporting mutant. However, he's not a traditional teleporter like Nightcrawler. His strongest suit is his ability to connect with the Brimstone Dimension and act as a passage. He can devour anything and everything in the void of his body and trap them in isolation. However, it's quite unclear as to how much control he actually has over this portal. Initially, during the Legacy Virus era, Abyss was able to pull people in and out of the void at his will. But later, he mentioned having no ability to bring back people out of the portal once they were in. On some occasions, he was also shown to lose control over who he pulls inside, like what almost happened with Banshee. At one point, his portal even acted in reverse, and everything that had once been pulled out was ejected, including Mystique. As for teleportation, he once did enter his own portal, but disappeared completely after that. How the portal behaves is also quite complicated. To some, some, the other side of the portal was a cold, dark abyss, while to others, time simply froze on the other side. So the only thing we can say for sure is that he has very limited control over his own powers. He also seems to have an unraveling body. That is, a body so pliable that he can extend any part of his body into ribbon-like tendrils. He can freely move these tendrils to constrict, grapple, and fight his foes, and extend them as far as he pleases. These tendrils also have superhuman strength and are resistant to high temperatures. When Abyss lost his powers after M-Day, these tentacle-like powers were recreated mechanically by the Isolationist. Marvelous verdict. Abyss was never meant to be a hero, at least not in the traditional sense. Born into chaos, created to serve his father's interdimensional schemes, feared by pretty much everyone, and exploited time and again by those who saw him as nothing more than a living gateway, his life was defined by forces beyond his control. And yet, in key moments, he chose defiance over destiny. Whether it was standing against Azazel, saving fellow mutants from destruction, or sacrificing himself during the fall of X, Abyss proved there was more to him than darkness and void. His life was a tug-of-war between being a weapon and being a person, but he stood up, fought back, and in his own strange way, made a difference. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.